everywhere you go. MTN.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to the 28th MTN Business World Executive Breakfast Meeting. For the past 6 months, the world has been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Countries like China had the early records or early cases of COVID-19, and it's gradually spread around the world. In the case of Ghana, for the past 3 months, we've been dealing with COVID-19. There have been a lot of restrictions, and the way we do things have changed. Our everyday lives have changed. The way we do business has also changed. Now, this morning, we are coming to you with this executive breakfast meeting on the theme, The Future of Work is Here, Preparing the Workplace for Tomorrow's Needs. My name is Kojo Akoto Boateng. Before we begin, I'd like to state that this event is taking place in a studio under strict social distancing guidelines. Before we got in, all the necessary protocols were followed. Our technical team and the whole crew have also been taken through the protocols to ensure that we bring you this conversation that is going to shape the way we do things in a safe and convenient way to you in your homes and your offices. Now, I will introduce our speakers for today, and we'll go for a quick break. Now, we have 4 speakers for today. In the studio, we have the CEO of Fidelity Bank Ghana, Mr. Julian Opuni. We also have the CEO of ClearSpace, Mr. Ehi Beniti, and the Country Director of Oracle Ghana, Franklin Asari. On video link, we have the West Africa Regional Biz Breakfast, and also follow the handles MTN Business Ghana, MTN Ghana, and GH Business World. Welcome address from the CEO of MTN Ghana, and we'll continue the conversation. Stay with us.
In real life, there's no buffering. So why accept it from your internet connection? Get connected and experience ultra-fast internet to the home from MTN. MTN Home, powered by MTN Fiber Broadband.
We're good together. We're there for you, everywhere you go.
Hello, fellow business executives and all our online viewers. Welcome to the 28th MTN Business World Executive Breakfast Meeting. The theme for this event is the future of work, preparing the workplace for new talent needs. The timing of this could not be better. In a world where 6 months ago, none of us would have imagined where we are today. Today, we have a lot of our kids no longer in school. We have workers working from home. We have e-learning programs supporting our kids and children. We also have e-commerce sites that are supporting our work and shopping while we work and school from home. A lot has changed since we turned the new year, and none of us would have expected this drastic change. MTN continues to deliver a bold new digital world to support the future that we are today. The theme for today will highlight what this future means for us, particularly thinking about the workplace and the talent needs for that workplace. A year ago, I had the opportunity to present to a number of youth on a topic that's very similar to the topic we're discussing today. But little did I know that a year from now, I'll be sitting here faced with the same challenges that I spoke about last year. I'm looking forward to the dialogue that's about to take place, and I'm very sure the panelists who've been so kind to accept our invitation to speak to us and to speak to you today we'll have a very engaging and vibrant discussion on this topic. I'd like to take the opportunity to say thank you to our panelists, Julian, Estelle, Ehi, and Franklin, for your time, but also for sharing your experience and your knowledge on this topic. And to all our viewers out there, I would like to thank you for making the time to be with us this morning, and I hope you enjoy the session. I'm sure I will. Thank you, and have a good day, everyone.
We there for you everywhere you go.
Thank you very much, Selom. That was Selom Adadivo, the CEO of MTN Ghana. Now, before we continue our conversations, I would also want to stress again that this event has taken into consideration all the necessary protocols. All of us in the studio have been taken through the drill. We were all made to go through the protocols before getting into the studio. Our crew here have also been taken through the protocols, and they are all doing the right things for us to bring you this conversation in your home. And because of COVID-19, this conversation is not coming to you with a live audience. So those of you watching us online, you are our audience. We will take your questions, we'll take your contributions all through the online platforms. Once again, we've gone through the protocols, social distancing, hand washing, sanitizing, and everything that we need to do to bring to you this program in a safe and convenient manner. Now we get into the conversations. Now the theme is the future of work is here, preparing the workplace for tomorrow's needs. I'm going to start the conversations from the studio, and first I'll start with Mr. Julian Opuni. What is your take on the topic, and how is your organization preparing for this?
Thank you, John, and hello to all the viewers as well. I think that is definitely the case, and there's no question around the fact that we now have an expedited process of executing what I used to term as a lot of rhetoric in the past. So lots of business executives in the past, you will hear on various platforms as they're talking about what the future of work looks like. COVID-19 has actually expedited that process, and if you look at the most recent happenings, especially in our part of the world, and the lockdown situation where you still have to have a clear business continuity plan in place, which enables you to carry on offering services to your customers, and also safeguarding your staff, measuring productivity, etc. That meant that you had just a few days to react to all the stuff that you had written down, which you were not hoping to necessarily put into place without something like this happening. It's also important to bear in mind that this expedited process has meant that we can now leverage on new opportunities, and there'll be a changed behavior going forward. Without a doubt, once this passes, things will not be the same. And I think any business will be fairly naive to think that they can just go back to the old way of working. If you look at in our environment, if you like, the remote way of working is now effectively here to stay. And certain capabilities that we didn't think were available suddenly have become very evident. Meetings happening, not necessarily with 8-10 people in a room, but the ability to just do lots of meetings in a very short space of time has now become the way of work. And we've had to create that capability. And even the protocols around working remotely and having meetings and teleconference with your colleagues. One of the things also is about role reassignment, because with the level of traffic and activity, etc., we now have to quickly scale up certain parts of the business that may not be seen as evidently critical to the delivery of our services. And you still have to do it in an e-learning kind of environment and train and get people ready to be able to do those services, because the customer needs have been, changed significantly as a result of what's going on. It also means that we've had to establish, and all business will have to establish new ways of measuring productivity and activity of your staff, because when you have people scattered over various locations and all over the place, how do you still use your traditional ways of measuring output? And I think what is evident now is because of the rotation system and the fact that people are working from home, etc., it's no longer about hours worked. It's really around output. And you have to put in place those systems that enable businesses measure output and see the productivity, of their staff. Cyber, especially in our environment, has now become a real issue, cybersecurity. As you migrate a lot of activity and transactions on digital platforms, both for internal working and also for serving your customers, it now becomes high priority So every organization will have to now reprioritize all their initial projects, even from as recently as January, because now there's a reprioritization, which means that you now have to react to the realities of your market. And so cyber and all the budgeting around cyber that normally is over a prolonged period because it's a fluid, ongoing system is no longer the case, because you have to create that readiness and the ability to ensure that you protect your business in the short term. Maximizing space usage. So suddenly with the rotation, it's become very evident that if you look in your work environment, you probably don't need as much space as you have. Yeah. Hot desking, which used to be a buzzword maybe years and years ago, now becomes very evident. And a lot of, if you like, head office functions. And I always separate it from the frontline businesses in the likes of a financial institution and the back office processes, where in the current environment, they have to go into that mode of working where there's a hot desking. That means you don't need as much space. There's efficiency creation as a result of that. But on the front end as well, you now have to create the space for social distancing in your frontline delivery of services. You have to have discussions around the forced migration of activity onto digital platforms, which is something that we've been talking about over a period of time. But now the psyche of our customers is they don't want to find themselves in environments where they are unnecessarily exposed to potential infection. They don't want to be in a situation where they have to go out of their current comfort zones. And so you have to create the readiness for the digital platforms. It means that things like channel optimization, and for a banking institution, channels are anywhere in which we can interface with our customers. So you're talking about bricks and mortar, branches, ATMs, and then there's the digital alternative channels, which are your app, USSD, internet banking, all of those sorts of things. And that means that they have to be on a high state of readiness and availability for your customers. And there'll be a forced migration in certain instances to protect both your business and them. So I think in a nutshell, that's the reality of the current environment we're in. And these are things we've spoken about in the past. And it's a silver lining in a way. But the businesses that are best prepared to react are the ones that will be able to leverage the opportunities it presents.
When I come back to you again, I'd like to know how this is going to affect banking jobs going forward, how this is going to affect real estate going forward, because now you're looking at other channels, digital, virtual channels. Are we going to have fewer branches? Are we going to have fewer jobs in the sector? I'll come back to you for that, but I'll go to Ehi for his thoughts on the topic. Ehi.
Thanks for having me, and good morning to our listeners out there. So COVID-19 in general, I think we have to look at it from two perspectives. One, time being the underlying denominator. What's happening now, let's say over the next 12 to 18 months, and what happens beyond that. And for this, we can sort of go back to history and look at what happened about 100 years ago in the Spanish flu. So if we start first with what will be the general impact of COVID-19 across the board. If we took 100 years ago during the Spanish flu at the turn of the century, Graham Bell and AT&T were just trying to roll out the telephone. And then you had the Spanish flu happened. And it was an accelerator for the adoption of things like the telephone. So up till then, it was just a device which people used casually or recreationally. But what happened was the Spanish flu was an accelerator. It moved the world in a particular direction. And I see the same thing happening with COVID-19 in general. So the future of work is moving in one direction. And like Julian said earlier, you have several considerations to think of. So there's this constant tension between mobility, which is people moving around and moving goods around, and communication, which is the need for people to engage. And as mobility has sort of decreased, the need for communication has increased. And in simple terms, you have fewer taxis and more virtual calls. So your meetings, the way in which meetings happen, the way in which business happens, the channels over which these happen are evolving with the rise and fall of particular industries. Within organizations like ours, whose job is to look a little ahead into the future and provide the technology and the resource which supports businesses in delivering on their objectives, our responsibilities in times like this are to make sure that businesses have the ability to respond to digital channels faster and can take advantage of the opportunities which data and communication present in solving the problems like this. So these two things, I think, are important drivers. So time. So in the long term, statistically speaking, I don't think COVID-19 would really matter. It will be an accelerator. But in the short term, businesses have to evolve, and the nature of work is changing. Underlying that is the idea of the democratization of work, which is that work is shifting from people sitting around offices to being distributed around the world, and the impact these have on how businesses support this democratization, I think are the long and short-term impacts of COVID-19.
When I come back to you later, I would like to understand how the future will be with respect to automation. You are the futurist here. You use artificial intelligence to predict outcomes and to predict to model how the future will look like. So I'd like to understand a bit more from you on that score. Now, I'll take the initial comments from Mr. Franklin Asari, Country Director of Oracle Ghana. Franklin.
Well, good morning, panelists. Good morning, Kojo. Good morning, Ghana. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I like the theme. We are saying that the future of work is here, and it's indeed here. We've been talking about the future of work for a long time, but I think COVID has brought it home. I think ultimately we're talking about how to manage our customer expectations from a company perspective, and we'll have to do that now with technology as well as with talent. And I believe that talent is now going to power digitization and be the enabler and the accelerator behind digital efforts in this space. Now, employees, the reality is, are going to work remotely, and that will go on for a very long time. How do we engage these employees who are working remotely? How do we communicate with them as they work remotely? How do we train them as they work remotely? And how do we motivate them? These are all questions that we need to look at and look at critically.
So from what you are saying, we cannot approach today and tomorrow with an analog mindset.
Absolutely not.
And HR departments may have to, as a matter of urgency, throw away all their analog ways and look at the digital and the virtual ways of doing things. Absolutely. So this is also going to affect the way companies hire people.
Absolutely.
Interesting. When I come back to you, we'll delve deeper into that. I want to go to our fourth speaker, Estelle Akofio-Soa. She's the West Africa Regional Manager for C Squared. Estelle is joining us on video link, which is also one of the things that COVID-19 is pushing. Previously, she would have been here in person, but now she's joining us on video link. Estelle, your initial thoughts on the theme for today?
Yeah, good morning, Kojo, and the audience. Great to be able to join you from home. And yes, it's a very relevant topic. So I think that, as has already been said, COVID-19 has really just fast-tracked something that was already happened, or maybe not even fast-tracked it, but just really brought it into our reality. The world of work has been changing for years, and I think I'll sort of focus on four things. And one is globalization and the fact that businesses today want to be able to tap in and reach the whole world and have to do that. You can't just think about your immediate market. Technology has been another driver. The way information can be shared so quickly, the way things that are enabled, processes are changed by technology. So that's also really been changing the workplace. The third is what I call democratization in the workplace. I think Ehi already talked about it. As people understand more and more their rights to communicate, their right to information within the workplace. Traditionally you had very heavy top-down businesses. And as people, as I said, understand their rights to be involved, to participate in decision-making, and as companies understand that everybody has something to contribute to make the company successful. that's also been a big change in the workplace. And the fourth thing for me is just the understanding of the need for the balance. And as I was preparing for today, I was thinking about how we always say work-life balance. And I think COVID has really made us all think about it the other way, which is, life-work balance. Life needs to come first. Yes, work is so important for us. It pays our bills, gets kids into school, everything else that it enables. But life is so important. I think this change has been happening fastest within the technology industry. And over 10 years ago, when I joined Google, saying that you were working from home, WFH, was already a norm. And managers accepted it, the company accepted it. It wasn't that you were just at home being lazy. You were working from home, often for personal reasons, to be able to look after kids or get something done in the house. And there was an understanding that you could be as productive and committed to your work, whether you were at home or working from home. So definitely the world of work has been changing. As I said, for me, it's just that COVID has really brought this into reality and, confronted us with it.
Further. So companies like Google, Twitter, Facebook, other companies have announced that they will allow their staff to work from home till end of year. Facebook is looking at allowing 50% of their staff to work from home in the next few years. How do we approach this work from home scenario, and how do individuals, one, ensure productivity, and businesses ensure productivity to ensure that whilst we deal with the times and the situations that we find ourselves in, businesses will continue to be profitable and productive, and individuals will also continue to be responsible towards their businesses to ensure everybody wins?
Yeah, great question. And I think, trust is a huge part of it, So knowing I think companies have to set clear policies and understand that it is a different environment. So once your policies are clear about how people work remotely, the hours that are understood the person is going to be doing. Obviously, you also need the importance of internet is critical because people still need to be able to connect into the office, communicate with their team members, join meetings, etc. So having good internet connection, again, I think that's a huge reality that COVID has presented us with. So transparency of working. So, when you're all in the same place, you can just see what people are doing. You can walk up to their desks. So companies need to think of new ways of creating this transparency to be able to see what people are doing, still to be able to record it, and for people to be held accountable. So I think, these are some of the things. Of course, the cloud. So for us at C Squared, moving to everyone being working from home, of course, except for our engineers who still had to be out on the field to install and build our network. And of course, we made sure that they were provided with the necessary protective gear, etc., to keep them safe. But when you work in the cloud, it doesn't matter where you are. And I think that's been a big reality check for businesses as well, to suddenly realize, well, I actually can't access my documents and my work is offline. And I think that's one part of the tech industry that's hugely going to benefit from this time, and companies recognizing that they need to be online to in the cloud, for people to be able to work remotely.
MTN Business World Executive Breakfast Meeting. The theme for this edition is the future of work is here, preparing the workplace for tomorrow's needs. And Estelle Akofio-Soa joining us on video link, and I have the MD of Fidelity Bank, Julian Opuni, in the studio. Mr. Ehibiniti is the CEO for Clear Space, and Mr. Franklin Asari is the country director for Oracle Ghana. We are bringing you this event in a studio which has taken consideration or which is considering all the various protocols that we need to implement to make this safe and convenient for all of us. So all the protocols we've gone through, we've had health experts advise us as to how to approach this program. Our crew and everybody have been taken through the protocols, so this is coming to you in a safe way. Now, if you are watching us, you are on MTN Ghana's Facebook page, but you can follow MTN Biz Breakfast, that's the hashtag, and tweet your thoughts. MTN Business GH, you can tweet your thoughts through that handle as well. MTN Ghana, and also GH Business World. We'll be reading some of your messages as the show proceeds. Now, I'll come back to the studio, and I'll start with you, Franklin Asari. Estelle mentioned transparency. She mentioned democratization of the workplace, and she mentioned productivity and managing talent. How should the HR function of businesses recreate themselves to meet the needs of these times, to ensure productivity, to ensure you have the best people to work with, and to ensure that everybody is being taken into consideration whilst we deal with these virtual COVID times?
Interesting. This is really a loaded question, so let me tackle it. Because
you're a loaded man, so.
Well, in terms of transparency, companies have KPIs, and that can now be easily monitored because you've been given something to do. You are remotely located. You still have to do it. You have a collaboration channel, with all these Slack and all these other channels that we have, and people can find out what you're doing very easily. So I think that we can manage the transparency bit. There are issues with skill. For example, people have had to learn Zoom and how to use Zoom now. Somebody was telling me yesterday there's now a BA in Zoom, mechanics, which is a new degree course. And this is the reality of how to engage customers and clients now, and even in the team work environment. So I think we have created a digital workplace where skills are key, and the right skills are key. And in addition to looking at their transparency, which you can monitor, I think that we still need to address the skill element as our workers work remotely. Because in the office environment, you can have a problem, you can go to a colleague by the next desk and help me and look at this. In your home, you're alone. And I think that we need to develop that to allow people to be able to grow and develop, because the work environment, as it was before COVID, allowed people to grow and shadow. I think this time you are home and you are the expert in your own house, and I think we need to make sure that we can monitor that development of the career of the individual, of their skill development very well, so that the company benefits in terms of outcomes and the employee also benefits.
For individuals who are preparing for the job space, for individuals who are already in the job space and would want to keep their jobs, what are some of the key things they must equip themselves with to be relevant to their businesses?
Well, I think that certainly you need to be able to use all the digital tools now and use it very well. And I believe that companies should introduce certification, informal ones, to make sure that employees, as part of their skill development and training, can use them. Zoom being one of them, Teams being another. Everything else out there you need to be able to use, because you can't tell where your client has gone. In addition to that, we need to introduce collaboration tools so we'll be able to work with each other. I think Estelle said it, cloud has come, and cloud has come to stay. And we need to embrace cloud, full hands, and say that this is, and be able to use it as a government and as a people and as Africans. And then we'll take the opportunity to be able to leapfrog our economies using the cloud technologies that are cheaper. And so I think this is Africa's time. Certainly, this is Ghana's moment.
You've mentioned an angle which I'll come back to you as a government, because I know that the business environment has key stakeholders. We are seeing private entities uptake a lot of technology. I cannot say same for government. I'll take your thoughts on how the government can also uptake some of these technologies to ensure that the tripod of business, that is the customer, the business, and the government, would work efficiently in these times to ensure that the business environment has it a bit easier in going forward. But I'm coming to you. Hey, you are the AI man. the role of artificial intelligence and bots in the automation of work. How is it going to be, and how should we prepare for all these things?
Okay, so whenever the topic of automation and artificial intelligence comes up with relation to work, the discussion usually starts with one of panic and fear. And it starts with people asking, are machines going to take away our jobs? This is where usually the conversation starts with. And I'm happy to announce to you that machines are not going to take away our jobs. For one, I'm pretty sure our barbers are not going to be jobless, because people are definitely going to, COVID-19 has told us that people still need to have good haircuts. But the idea behind automation is that it reduces the amount of skill required to do work. So what AI does is it enhances the abilities of people to do what were immensely complex tasks and make it simpler, and levels the playing field for what used to be extremely complex tasks. So let's look at some examples practically. For one, now your average telephone, your average mobile phone by Huawei, by Samsung, by Google, has some AI built in. And people are able to take amazing photographs, have new filters, make themselves look pretty, have beautiful skin, with a camera. This has not taken away the jobs of photographers. It has enhanced the abilities of everybody else out there to do things which they previously could not do. And taking what could be specialized skill and made it slightly more available to everyone. So you have that. One of the first effects of automation on the workplace is that you have that low-skilled workers operating highly technical or highly advanced machinery tend to move jobs away from highly skilled artisans. Mm-hmm. So a historical example is the watch industry. So you have that, for example, people who are making watches in China for Apple, the Apple Watch has outsold the entire Swiss watchmaking industry in terms of productivity. So you have a few people sitting behind computers and machines, which enhance their ability and their skill levels, and allows them to do things which were previously the preserve of only highly skilled, highly paid artisans. The underlying driver for automation is economics. And the equation of adoption is that the value created by automation must be greater than the cost of implementing it or distributing it. Or the value minus the cost must be greater than or equal to zero. Now, where those economics don't line up, automation is not useful. So big industries, like, again, it's another tension between, in this era, it's another tension between mobility and communication. Mm-hmm. So the whole transportation industry is indexed on the idea of moving people here to there. It has drivers, it has people who sell petrol, it has, and this entire value chain and logistics supply chain which supports that infrastructure. And then you have that technology comes along with communication and says that, hey, maybe we don't need so much mobility. And maybe we can automate skills so that a lot of things which required a certain level of intervention no longer require that. And so you have that some repetitive tasks which were done by people will shift. Mm-hmm. But what history tells us is that that never takes away jobs. It increases the entire productivity. Actually, the most productive times in modern history have actually been somewhere between 1998 and now, which was the rise of the internet and the proliferation of technology and Moore's law kicking in. So you had a huge explosion in productivity globally and new opportunities. So larger middle class, more money. So you have these temporary shifts. Industries are disrupted, the old way of doing things are changed, but fundamentally you create new winners. And this is the opportunity which I think Africa has. Our raw material is unbelievable. The brains in Africa, the talent, the people, fantastic. Now, suddenly, initially a barrier was mobility. How do you get these people in places where their talent and skill can be most productive? And this meant hurdles with visas, hurdles with workplaces, etc. What technology and AI and communication does in this environment is that it reduces that gap and suddenly gives us an opportunity to put our best talents behind the world's biggest problems while still being in Ghana and not having to move them out of Ghana. And so I think what automation could do for us is create new industries, create new opportunities, create new drivers for value in our local.
Opportunities for less skilled workers to get something to, because you mentioned photography.
Yes.
And these days I'm seeing a lot of people going into photography because even with a very good phone, you can take good photos, add your effects, and get some business going.
Yes.
We are seeing AI helping people to go into e-commerce, so people don't have to rely on the big e-commerce platforms, but they could create something on their own and also reach their markets.
Absolutely.
So,
and in other specialized skills, so you have things like in healthcare, for example, where we have a really poor doctor to population-patient ratio. The question is, how do you attain something like universal healthcare, where your ability to distribute a high-quality skill, like a doctor, to a wide population at scale? And you have things like AI, which support your ability to take critical skills which a doctor has and support other people in the delivery of healthcare and making sure that a certain quality of care is universally accessible. So I think AI will provide new opportunities for growth in our local economy.
Now let me come to the MD of Fidelity Bank. He says AI will present new opportunities. But let's look at your industry. If you look at Ghana, the formal sector, the banking and the financial services employs a lot of people. And we are seeing a shift now. A lot of people are working from home. Real estate analysts are predicting that banks may need fewer premises to work with. Is this going to result in job losses, or is going to result in opportunities where banks can even uptake more people who would then bring in more customers and more money?
Okay, so I think I'll echo what he said, because there's always a certain element of scaremongering when it comes to the financial services sector and the impact of technology on the future. And I think there will definitely be some casualties over time. But there will always be a mix between digital and human labor. And digital labor is a bit in reference to what you were saying, AI, etc. And you can actually take every single job function within a financial institution now, look at what the reality of what that role is now, and with the advances in technology and utilization of data, AI, etc., what that job will look like. The current reality is that we need to build the capacity of the people that are going to be required going forward so that their skills are relevant for the future. There are certain things, maybe he will agree or disagree, but I think whatever happens, there are certain human traits which AI will never be able to replicate. So because AI cannot replicate that, what it means is that the skills of the future for financial services delivery and even interactions is where you build on your ability to do things like innovate, emotional intelligence, the ability to even use data to make the next step decision for customers. So in preparing for this, I looked at a few things and I was like, okay, what are some of there'll be new roles that will come up. We mentioned about the HR functions within institutions like banks. And the HR function will now have to start looking at, different or a modern way of career path planning. There'll be a lot of lateral movement for various skill requirements and not necessarily the traditional, I expect to move up this way. If you take a certain role like a teller in a frontline situation in a branch, etc. Yes, maybe there will be a higher proliferation of cash accepting ATMs and maybe a more cashless society going forward. But it doesn't mean that there can't be the redeployment opportunity, where as a result of now leveraging on more data, the advantage with going digital means that in a country like Ghana, we're now really going to migrate from being in an area where we have a lot of static data which we don't know what to do with, to actually getting access to more information around the behaviors of our consumers. In the past, someone would get paid because it's a very cash-driven environment. They'll just go to the ATM, take their cash out. Ghana is one of the few places where we still call a debit card an ATM card, because an ATM card means you can only use it on an ATM. And the reality is a debit card. But we don't have enough things like POSs. You know, there might be less than 15,000 POSs vis-a-vis maybe 4 million cards in issue. Maybe, say 50% of them are active. So going back to the issue of this, if you look at the reality of what's going to happen. Yes, you mentioned about space. We may not need as many branches, but the type of branches we'll have will be different. If you go out to the developed world now, you walk into, a lot of them have maybe shrunk their branches by about 30 to 40%, but there's still the need to have some kind of presence because you have the differing levels of customer segments that you deal with. And also, I mentioned about the human trait. When you have a real problem and you want someone to empathize and be able to deal with it, you will still need that interface. It's just the skill of the individual to actually do that. So going forward, what skills are going to be relevant? You know, there was a joke before, which doesn't seem very funny to me now, which said that going forward, CEOs of banks will probably have to be technology experts. So I have to beef up my own you know, technology capabilities, etc. But the reality is that's what it is. Some banks are going to transform into effectively you know, technology companies that deliver financial services and products. And that means that you're not going to have to get the skills around cyber and the ability to utilize and monetize data. That's required in banks, because all the AI and stuff will do is churn out the information for you and you have to utilize it. 360-degree view of customers means that now that you have full visibility, like I was saying, migrating digital channels knows that I will know where you spend your money. And knowing where you spend your money means that I can use the AI to leverage your next move and start guessing customer next step. Product delivery, product design is going to be very customer-centric because it's based on behaviors that I can see based on the data available. And all this needs people who have the right level of skills. I think if we go past, it means that for HR functions in financial institutions, the onboarding situation means that you now need to create a pool. And, you know, education standards, I think Frank mentioned earlier on about the fact that certificates in Zoom, etc. The reality is you will now need to look at what are relevant skill sets for the new graduates that are coming out. Some of the courses that are there may no longer be relevant going forward. Soft skills are going to be very, very relevant going forward, which is that's going to be what's attractive to financial institutions like ourselves. On the capacity of, you know, space, etc., you're right, there'll be a reduction in there. There will be the need to really look at how you even place your channels. In certain areas, you know, people may be more in tune with using ATMs and other, you know, digital platforms for working. Others will need branches. There will be kind of scaled down branch structures, etc. So to end it all, yes, there will be a good combination of the digital and the human labor, which digital will never be able to replace. Well, it depends. I always say never be able to. Maybe in 100 years, computers will think like humans. But you know, the assumption at that stage, and you're probably going to think computers will be telling us what to do, as opposed to us telling them what to do.
Interesting thoughts. This is the 28th MTN Business World Executive Breakfast Meeting. We have a lot of your questions in, so we'll go for a quick break. When we return, I'll read your questions, and I'll have my panelists in the studio and Estelle on video link help us answer the questions, and then we'll take our final thoughts for this morning and wrap up. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Give me fish that will share my name.
There's so much variety, but there's only one sure way to pay. Got a payment to make? Just Momo it. We day for you, everywhere you go. So many styles to choose, but there's only one sure way to pay.
Momo?
Got a payment to make? Just Momo it. We day for you, everywhere you go.
Welcome back. This is the MTN Business World Executive Breakfast. My name is Kojo Akoto Boateng, and today we are talking about doing business in the COVID-19 era. The theme is the future of work is here, preparing the workplace for tomorrow's needs. And my guests, Julian Opuni, MD of Fidelity Bank; Estelle Akofio-Soa, West Africa Regional Manager for C-Squared; Ehi Beniti, CEO of ClearSpace; and Franklin Asari, Country Director of Oracle Ghana. I have Estelle on video link, and I have Julian, Ehi, and Franklin with me in the studio. And the studio has been designed to conform to the protocols to ensure safety. Our setup and our crew have appropriately been briefed and prepared to ensure the safety of all those involved in this event. So whilst you watch in the comfort of your home and your office, be rest assured that we took into consideration the protocols and we are bringing this to you in a safe way. So remember, MTN, we're there for you. Now, I'm going to go to the questions. And Estelle, if you are listening, you may want to attempt the first two questions for me. George Asante says, my question is, how do you help majority of people, especially my mom in the village and the market, to also take advantage of technology to do their business? Because they know very little about technology. Now, Dinard Kingsford says, my question is strictly based on how, on the creation of jobs or employment. How are we as a continent going to employ the talent that a company needs in these trying times? And will these mechanisms be effective enough? I think we've had thoughts and ideas on this particular question earlier by Franklin and Ehi and even Julian. Now, Gabriel Gabi Inkum says, there has been a lot of rumor that 5G is what brought COVID-19. Do you think so? I will answer this question. 5G didn't bring COVID-19. COVID-19 is a virus, and the virus doesn't travel through bandwidth and wave and wave. So that is it. Now, Kwabna Enim says, I would want the thoughts of Mr. Asari on how candidates for jobs can prepare themselves in terms of skills to meet the demands of HR experts for their workplace. I am Richmond Labi. So, Mr. Asari, you have one there. And this question says, don't you think working from home is very expensive, not only for businesses, but workers and students as well? These are 4 questions. I'll take quick thoughts on these because we don't have enough time. And then I'll ask the rest of the questions. Or if my panelists would agree with me, I'll just run through all the questions. Because some of them are similar questions. Now, Andrew Safo says, my question, what preparation is the government taking to help telcos roll out 5G on a low budget? Not all the telcos can afford the deployment. Is there a plan for telcos and NCA to collaborate? Andrew, what we can do is to put this question to the government and share a response for you later. David Gold says, the future of work depends largely on technology infrastructure and digital skills of the workforce. The IFC 2019 report on digital skills revealed a big gap in the digital skills of our workforce. How can private companies help in capacity building in digital skills to ensure we have the right basic, intermediate, and advanced digital skills? And let me take a last one, then we can take quick answers. Jemima Okai says, question, looking at the impact of COVID-19 on businesses, it looks like most people will move towards the use of technology, and most of the use are going to shift into tech workspaces. My question, therefore, is how do you think this will affect agri production, and what can organizations and schools do to ensure that the shifts in interest from agri does not affect output? Simply, how can agri be approached in this new era? This question is for all of us, so anybody can attempt, but I'll go to Estelle first for her thoughts on some of the questions, and I'll come back to the studio. Estelle.
Yeah, and thank you. So I think I'll answer the first question first, and it was about how to get the majority of people, someone in the village to be using technology. And I think we should try to demystify technology. And even when we were talking about the cloud earlier, I was thinking about demystifying it. I think a lot of people think it's something so far and remote from them. But, when you use email, you are using the cloud already. So we often think of technology as something bigger and scarier than it is. It's actually much closer in our day-to-day life already. So when somebody is using Momo or mobile money to cover everyone, they are using technology when they are making phone calls, when they're doing WhatsApp. Now, our unfortunate reality is that we know not everyone has a smartphone, can afford a smartphone, and data still is something that people can't necessarily make the most important thing that they spend money on. And so the way we might be online all the time, not everyone has that disposable income to do that, to afford a smartphone, to have a broadband connection, not a slow connection, but a fast, always on connection, as any of us, watching this call are enjoying. So that's the challenge, and people need more disposable income, and that just comes to our whole economy. I also just quickly, one of my favorite hashtags at the moment is faith not fear, and when we're talking about technology and AI, digitization, I do think both companies and individuals have a responsibility to be aware of the workplace and the changes that we're facing. So institutions need to think about how can they enhance people's skills so that when their job does become less relevant, they're actually able to fit into another slot. And in the same way, employees can't just be sitting there thinking, okay, this is what I do. You know, you need to think and see, observe what's happening in your organization and the world and see how you can enhance your skills. Be proactive, go to your manager, talk about your role and where you see the organization going. So when we take things into our hands, then it's not so frightening, you know. So be aware and step up and know that this is a trend. My last thing on faith, not fear, maybe not in the same way, but I do think that real estate, and in Ghana in particular, is so expensive. And I hope that this is a wake-up call that the cost of rent needs to come down. Yes, we will still need physical premises, but really the cost of rent in Ghana is just quite ridiculous and prohibitive to most businesses. So maybe a little bit more fear for the landlord to bring down the cost of rent. Thank you.
So Franklin, I'll come to you.
Respond to the government question that you wanted to pose?
Yes, I think you are in that space.
I think this is my time.
Yeah.
Certainly, government needs to address this issue. There has to be a cultural change, first of all. We were, certainly from a government perspective, I think they were in an age well before this, and this has worsened the problem. We need to appreciate that we're in a cloud age. We need to have technologies that are cloud the government is deploying. The government also needs to be able to attract young people into government work, civil service. And without the right technology infrastructure, these kids are not coming. Because everybody wants to work for a company with the right digital platform so that they can develop their skills. So the kind of skills that we have in government today, I don't think our young people are going there. And we need them to go there to have strong institutions to be able to move the country forward. Also, I'd like to talk about training. When it comes to training, there are certain skills that I call critical. They will give us a competitive advantage, if I'm to quote Porter. But so those skills can go to AI. We can introduce some AI and improve some processes. Digital workflows in government, that would be interesting. Approval workflows. Because some of these things, why not? You know, in our payroll processing, why not? We should be able to do all that. And then what I call pivotal skills. These are skills that will cause differentiation. And we need to be able to bring all these things in, enabling AI to be able to bring the cost of government and government business down. I certainly also think that we need to have a certain clear COVID strategy for government that is clearly tabled. And I'd like to see that address how the government workers will be motivated. The creation of digital workplaces, the tools they are going to use, the skills they currently have, and what they need to have, and the assessment of that gap. Because that response would affect everybody else in terms of the enabling environment that they are creating. And I think this is something that has to happen now.
Great. Somebody asked a question specifically addressed to you about how, let me get that question quickly. How candidates can prepare themselves in terms of the skills to meet. I think you gave us some ideas earlier, but I have a feeling the person joined late. So if you can give us a quick 20-second on that.
Well, certainly digital skills, and that is a wide area we need to look at digital skills. But I also think that we need cognitive skills, going back to the Future of Work, World Economic Forum. I think we need to have leadership. We need the ability for our graduates to be able to write, little writing, that can be a problem, and prepare themselves for a corporate marketplace and not hide behind this thing called career, which is potential trapped behind a desk. That needs to be released and allow the country to grow and leapfrog.
Okay. Ehi, I'm coming to you. So many questions. Were there any questions that you saw that we want to address, or I should give you specific ones?
I'd like to tackle two questions. One was on the future of things like Agri. So the interesting thing about technology and AI as an accelerator is that you can pretty much add technology to any industry. Actually, technology as an enabler has influenced every single industry, and there's no industry which has survived its original form once technology is introduced. So you now have Agri tech, for example, and what this does is that it enhances productivity. You have AI which supports you identifying diseases in plants. You have AI which helps you support your planting seasons. You have AI which helps you support how crops should be grown, where they should be grown, and which crops are most valuable in the marketplace. So there's a lot of data which goes into supporting industries like Agri, its value chain, its supply chain, its distribution, which underlying make the industry far more valuable. So I don't think that moving or migrating to a digital workplace takes away anything from traditional industries. Actually, what happens is that this accelerates these industries. The second thing I wanted to speak to was the fact that technology creates new opportunities from different locations. So back to the same issue. It doesn't matter whether you're in Takoradi or you are in the north of Ghana or you are in Kukuntumi. It doesn't really matter where you are. Once there's good connectivity, there is basic power. Okay, you have power, whether it's solar or it's on the grid, you have good connectivity. Then you can, one, acquire new skills wherever you are. Or what this season has taught us is that we can take education online.
Yep.
So wherever you are, you can be trained. That's the first thing. And then you can find work wherever you are. Your mobility is no longer your limitation. You do not have to come to Accra. You do not have to go to the US. You do not have to go to London or anywhere else to become useful and productive. So it's a double-edged sword. And rather than looking at it from a perspective of fear, I think what we should be looking at is what are the opportunities which this creates for our rural communities, which allow them to have, as Estelle said, life-work balance. Live where you are and thrive where you are. Thrive online, wherever you are.
Interesting. Now I'll come to you, Julian, for your thoughts on some of the questions.
Okay, I know in the interest of time, I'll just hone in on the one about how do you get a village person to use technology and around the impact of what is happening. And one of the things I like to pull our minds to, for instance, is something that hit me recently. When you drive down the street, you'll find that there aren't as many people selling, you can use MTN as an example, the scratch cards as much as they used to be in the past, because people are migrating onto other ways of topping up credit, etc. Now, that was a typical example of a paradigm shift in the way people actually react to the utilization of technology. And you'd have assumed that the common man on the street will prefer that as a way of doing it instead of using technology. That's evidence of that, someone mentioned about leapfrogging, but the expedited process of actually getting everybody in on technology platforms. Financial literacy is not at the optimum level in Ghana. So that means there will always be some need in the short term for assisted delivery, if you like, assisted services, or delivery of services to the general public, especially people in rural communities, etc. So it won't be as straightforward as just go on this platform and do this, do that. We don't have enough of a penetration with regards to the smartphones, etc., which has an impact on the ability to deliver more agile products, etc. So in the short term, what I think is that, if you look at WhatsApp, there are lots of users of WhatsApp. If you look at the top 3 or so social media platforms used in Ghana, they don't have anybody assisting them to load and use WhatsApp. So what it means is that the delivery of platforms and services to everybody based on various segments needs to replicate these sort of things, which is easy to onboard and easy to use. So if WhatsApp and Facebook doesn't need someone to come and sit with you and show you how to go on board and use it, the Snapchat and TikToks, etc., people are just using them. It just means that the platforms of the future for delivery of financial services, etc., needs to replicate that sort of way, and then you'll get more people on board, because you cannot have a sustainable system of assisted onboarding, assisted delivery of products and services for the long term, because it just it's not sustainable, and for impact on business, it won't be that profitable anyway.
Interesting thought. So we should not think that our markets, the people are not sophisticated enough to use any of these platforms. We're looking at data from WeSocial about Facebook numbers. And in the first, this from January till date, 600,000 new Facebook users from Ghana alone. And TikTok, which used to be not to be in the top, has also been downloaded a lot more in Ghana. So people are gradually becoming digitally aware, and so companies should approach it accordingly. There's an interesting question I want to give to you, Julian, before we finally wrap up. Senior Kwesi Free says, this pandemic has caused a lot of entities to lose a greater part of their revenue. In this capitalist world, it means consumers are going to be charged more to minimize and mitigate the loss. What should businesses rather do in order not to overburden the already burdened consumer?
I think there will always be the need for institutions to react to the reality of the market that you're in. There's only so much you can do with regards to passing on either inefficiencies or your inability to react to the realities of your market onto customers, because all it means is that you are removing the barriers to entry for your particular business and allowing others to come up with innovation that serves the needs of the customers. If you're customer-centric, in our part of the world, price and money is a high driver of buying decisions. And therefore, there's only so much you can pass across. So my advice to organizations will be, when you're facing the challenges of shrinking revenues, etc., the one thing that is always a constant in any business is effectively your efficiency and your cost. And cost to serve, cost to acquire new customers, etc., are key things that you need to look at and bring in, either leveraging on technology or other efficient measures of making sure you can deliver the service without having to pass that on. It may also mean that as a business, you need to open new markets for yourself and discover, as a result of developments in the market, new ways in which you can actually serve the customer base that's in there. Something where you have an inherent capability to deliver services out there. You just leverage on it in that environment, which grows off your core business capabilities, as opposed to expecting that you can carry on passing on. Because a day will come when people will just say no and go to alternatives.
We have a question from Chris Dari in Kigali, Rwanda, and I'm throwing that to you, Ehi. He says, we've seen Africa leapfrog in a couple of areas. It's brought a lot of value, but at the same time, taking a different trend as opposed to the rest of the world. I'd like to find out from your speakers their thoughts on what innovations powered by digitization, data science, and AI that can emerge to improve inclusion of Africans who only have access to low-fidelity technologies.
Wow. That's a very loaded question.
Yes.
Interesting. So the summary of the question is, how do we help people whose access is limited to do things beyond the capabilities they have today? So putting it slightly differently, there's a world of opportunity. We have limited connectivity. We have limited devices. Are there any tools or technologies to help people in this environment to take advantage of that? I think things like that are often the dreams of entrepreneurs, and how new companies and businesses are formed. So you have examples where, let's take for example this idea of a gig economy. These are where people work as contract staff for companies. So I'm a bank, I need to build a product. I don't want to keep full-time staff. I want to hire a bunch of people to come together and build a product for me. You have platforms which suddenly make things like this possible, to hire the people, to equip them with the right specifications and for the delivery of the product. So the heart of it is that I think to get Africa leveraging tools like data science and AI in moving ahead, I think what we would be exploring fundamentally is, at its core, it's really a question of access. And what kind of, first, policy supports that access, and two, what investments are going in making sure that this access is truly widespread in making available these opportunities.
Great. And Franklin?
I think this is an opportunity for governments across Africa, starting in Ghana, I hope and pray, to set up and build technology parks. This is about creating pressure cookers, allowing the young people to innovate, bringing them together. All the tools are available. They are virtually available. It's an opportunity to dream. And I think this is something that is there and an opportunity they can't let go. These days you can code in anything, Angular, all of these tools are there, and create digital products. And by the way, one of the biggest, I don't want to mention the name of the company, is going to build the first lab, artificial intelligence lab in Ghana. So that tells me Africa is ready. No more excuses. We are ready. This COVID is for us.
In the era of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, this is also a time for African governments to get together to catalyze the growth and the absorption of technology.
Absolutely.
To drive the growth of the continent.
Absolutely.
Great stuff. We have a lot of other questions that I believe that we cannot answer now. Some of them have already been answered, especially those asking questions on HR departments and how they should reorganize themselves for these times. Franklin answered a lot of questions on HR-related matters. So if you go to the earlier part of the video, you can pick thoughts there. Those who want to know more about AI and how it's been affected or it's impacted these times, he answered a lot of questions on that particular topic. And those who want to know how COVID-19 is going to affect job losses and related matters, Franklin answered a lot of them. And the democratization of jobs, Estelle also answered a lot of them. So if you go to the earlier parts of the stream, you are going to, for those who joined late, you can listen to them once again and get answers to your questions. We are going to wrap up, but before I take your final thoughts, each of you is going to have 30 seconds. We have some winners for our wow moments, and I'll mention just a few of them. The rest of you will be contacted by our officials. Joe Akamenu, you've won a special prize from MTN for the wow moment. Francis Gota, you've also won something. Elizabeth Adumako, you've won. Nana Apia Akwe and David Nkrumah. The rest of you will be contacted by officials of MTN, so you get so each of you is getting 100 cedis airtime from MTN so that you can use it for more virtual conferences and for your virtual work. So 100 cedis airtime from MTN. So I'm going to take your final comments, but I'll start with Estelle first. Final comments as we wrap up. Your thoughts and advice for all of us as we wrap up. Estelle.
Yeah, thanks, Kojo, and this has been a great way to start the day. I think my final thought is really around, I'll steal Lucy Quist's phrase, the bold new normal. And when I use the word bold here, I think I'm really focusing on us being bold about ourselves and our capabilities. We need to do so much better about celebrating ourselves as Africans and relying on ourselves. So even if during this COVID time, I know a Ghanaian developed an automated machine for hand washing. I know that KNUST and the University of Ghana have also been doing a lot in testing, etc. Let's rely on ourselves. Let's celebrate and tell the world. I mean, COVID has been a great example as well of the world just waiting for Africa to explode. And that isn't what has happened. You know, so let's tell our own story. Let's embrace our own innovations and actually use them, invest in them. You know, we talked about a technology park. Please don't let government run it. It must be run by the private sector. Otherwise, it will be another dead technology investment. I think we've seen that government shouldn't take the lead on running technology. It might invest in it, but the private sector needs to be at the forefront if we're actually going to have it relevant and useful in our lives and developing our country, Ghana. Thank you.
I hope we'll take away from this is the fact that the time for dialogue and over-analysis is over. I mean, COVID has been a bit of a wake-up call for the majority of us, and so for organizational leaders, etc., this is the time to take those bold, in relation to what Estelle was saying, those bold steps and move things from paper into reality. For individuals that have concerns around the the future labor force and the talents required, etc. I think this is the time to actually take those bold steps and make yourself not just have the skills that are relevant, but those that make you an asset to an organization that is forward thinking, as opposed to going into, cowering in your shell and planning for the inevitable potential of not having a job, as opposed to becoming a potential asset.
Thank you very much, Julian.
I think I'd like to leave with one word, and to borrow a bit from what Estelle started on. I think this is a time for consequential leadership, and it requires audacity, it requires faith, and it requires that we are pragmatic in our approach about both the threats and the opportunities which this season presents. And we should never waste a good crisis. Every crisis presents an opportunity for change, and change in a manner which advances our country and our nation. And I think this is our time. We have been incredibly resilient. I celebrate the tenacity of the Ghanaian spirit in its response to COVID-19. Both in its empathy, ability to, on a social level, how people have responded in kindness with the difficulties of the situation, from a government level in terms of its response, and our ability to deal with the opportunities and the threats which these present. So I think we need to take advantage of this crisis and use that as a platform to advance ourselves as a nation.
Okay, thank you. Franklin?
Final comments, thoughts. I think this is a pause in the era of time. And I think that this is a pause for quiet reflection that COVID presents, although remorsefully sometimes. But I think this is still Africa's moment. Because in that pause, we are going to find a new belief in ourselves, and that has already begun. A sense of focusing on ourselves that everybody seems to be saying that we need to depend on ourselves now. I think some kind of bold leadership too we are beginning to see, because we are confronted with an enemy we can't see. And I think that this true Ghanaian spirit is beginning to come out. That spirit that started independence, and the first country to be so, to be independent 62 years ago. And that same resilience will see dominance in a digital revolution that has only just begun. And I believe we all need to live and be alive to see the fruits of it, and it is coming soon.
Thank you very much, Franklin. If we had an audience in here, I'm sure there will be a resounding applause for our panelists, but we don't have an audience in here, so you're not going to hear any applause. So if you're watching us right now and you want to applaud them, I think you can just share the video as your applause for our panelists for the insights they've given us today. So if you're on YouTube, Facebook, share the video on all your platforms as your way of showing appreciation to our panelists and for sharing their thoughts with us and their insights with us. We'll take a quick video from MTN Ghana. When we come back, we'll wrap up and say goodbye to you. Stay with us.
In real life, there's no buffering. So why accept it from your internet connection? Get connected and experience ultra-fast internet to the home from MTN. MTN Home, powered by MTN Fiber Broadband.
We're good together. We're there for you everywhere you go.
There are many ways to get around, but there's only one way to pay.
Momo?
Sure.
So many styles to choose, but there's only one sure way to pay.
Momo? Yes.
There's so many you can buy, but there's only one sure way to pay.
Momo?
Yes. Give me fish that will shame my enemy.
There's so much variety, but there's only one sure way to pay.
Momo, come on, Yamu.
There's so many ways to get together, but there's only one sure way to pay.
Momo? Hey, yes, Momo.
Got a payment to make? Use MTN Momo and enjoy real convenience in all your financial transactions. Live life the brighter way with MTN Momo. Just Momo it. We day for you everywhere you go. There's so many ways to get together, but there's only one sure way to pay. Got a payment to make? Just Momo it. We day for you everywhere you go.
All right, welcome back. Thank you very much for tuning in. This has been the 28th MTN Business World Executive Breakfast Meeting. The theme for today, the future of work is here, preparing the workplace for tomorrow's needs. We streamed this on MTN Ghana's Facebook page and the YouTube page. And for those of you who tuned in late, you can go back to the stream once we end it, and you can start from the beginning and get answers to some of the questions that you sent in late. Those who want to show appreciation to our panelists, please do share the video, copy the link, share it on WhatsApp, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it everywhere. So others will also get to know how to approach the work environment and the future of work going forward. I'd like to say a big thank you to our panelists. Estelle, who joined us on video link. Estelle is the West African Regional Manager for C Squared. Give us a final wave, Estelle. I'm giving you that digital wave. That's Estelle. Thank you very much, Estelle, for your time today. The MD of Fidelity Bank Ghana, Mr. Julian Opuni. I've been to a lot of their branches, and they seem to have had a sense of how the future would be way before COVID. The East Legon branch and all the branch networks, how they are integrating technology. And I love the Fidelity Bank app. Thank you very much, Julian, for joining us this morning. Ehi Biniti is, in traditional circles, you'd call him a wizard because he's the CEO for ClearSpace, and he uses technology and AI for modeling and prediction of trends and the future. Ehi, thank you very much for showing a bit of your wizardry this morning. And Franklin Asari, Country Director for Oracle Ghana. A lot of us are getting used to teleconferencing, virtual conferencing, and the virtual workspace, but Oracle started that way before COVID, and they are continuing to integrate systems so that we can all have it easy to do work virtually and to do work productively. Mr. Franklin Asari, thank you very much for joining us as well. And my name is Kojo Akoto Boateng. I work at City FM and City TV. I'd like to state finally, before we go, that we planned this event in this studio and took into consideration all the COVID-19 safety protocols to ensure that our panelists, our crew members, the host, and every other person here was working in a safe and sound environment with the most minimal threats when it comes to COVID-19. So those of you watching, be rest assured that we brought this to you in a safe manner. So keep following MTN Ghana, keep following Business World. Let's build Ghana together with the opportunities that this big yellow world of MTN presents for us. For those of you who have not signed on to MTN services, they have everything for you, from corporate services for solutions for your work to your personal services. Follow MTN Ghana on Twitter and Facebook and get to know more about their services for you, so that together we weather the storm that we find ourselves in and do good together to further the cause of Ghana and the cause of Africa and the world. Thank you for watching. God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your day.